Man, if I had $1 for every half-written novel I've given up on, well, actually, each one of those unfinished novels has cost me $5, so I'm actually buried under a mountain of debt that I will never fully climb out of. Every writer worth their salt acquires drawers and drawers full of never completed projects. This is a normal part of the process and not something that is necessarily a problem. Sometimes stuff just doesn't work out, or life gets in the way, and you give up on or put aside an incomplete novel. Writers give up on novels all of the time. Part of this is just the writing process itself, but part of it is also the result of mistakes. I've been thinking a lot lately about the different things that contribute to whether or not a writer will finish a given project, and that's what I want to talk about today. So today, let's look at 5 reasons that writers give up on their novels. The first reason that writers give up on their novels is they didn't think about the costs. Writing a novel doesn't cost anything financially, usually, until you get to like editing and publishing and whatever. But that's not the kind of costs that I'm talking about. Writing takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy. These are the costs, often the hidden costs, associated with completing a project like a novel. If you fail to appreciate and account for these costs, it may lead you to failure. It's fun to think about the benefits of writing, the sense of accomplishment, the bragging rights, seeing your story brought to life. All of that is really enjoyable, and we tend to focus on the enjoyable things. It's less fun to think about the long hours, the crippling self-doubt, the exhausting amount of work involved in getting that final literary masterpiece. That's the stuff that we don't tend to think about. If you aren't prepared to endure the costs that come along with writing a novel, then you're likely to give up. You need to make sure that you understand, account for, and prepare to bear these costs. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to see your project through to the end. Next reason that writers quit, they rely on other people. I asked somebody else to write this part of this. Oh, crap. You might think that leaning on one of your writerly buddies is a surefire way to maintain motivation to write. People talk all the time about accountability partners and using friends or groups to keep you on track towards your goals. On the surface, this seems like a great idea, and it usually works pretty well until the other people quit. What tends to happen when you rely too much on other people to support you in your work is the minute those people stop supporting you in your work, then the work stops. There is definitely a place for leveraging relationships to keep you on track. I think writing partners and writing groups and accountability buddies and all of that is really good, and you shouldn't avoid these things by any means. But at the same time, if you learn to become reliant on other people to keep yourself motivated, then you will never develop the skill to keep yourself motivated. You will be at the mercy of other people, and if they ever falter, then so will you. Writing groups and writing partners are fantastic. If you can find good ones, that is a major asset and will help your writing immensely. But you can't rely on these groups alone to keep you motivated. You have to develop the internal motivation to keep yourself going, even if the other people aren't there. The next reason that writers quit is they don't think about logistics. Writing a novel takes a lot of time, and if you still use a typewriter, also paper and ink. The people who finish projects are the people who think a lot about the how, when, and where the work is going to happen. Say you want to write a draft in the next 3 months. Ask yourself, when does this work happen? When during the day are you going to write? For how long are you going to write? Where are you going to write? When you don't work through the logistics of how the actual work is going to get done, then the work often doesn't get done. Right now, every hour of your day is filled with you doing stuff. Even if that stuff is just sitting there staring at the internet or whatever, you are doing something, whether it's sleeping, eating, working, staring at the walls. You are doing something every hour of the day. And if you want to do something new, like writing a novel, you need to figure out what hours of the day are going to shift from what you're currently doing to writing in order to get that project done. There's another layer to this. When you set aside time specifically to work on your writing, then you are also working to build habits and systems to get that work done. Goals and aspirations are great, but to get long-term work done, you really need systems. The system can be rolling out of bed at 11 a.m. and thrashing at your keyboard until you get hungry. It doesn't need to be a fancy system, but you need a system that allows you to write consistently. You need to think about the logistics of how you're going to get your writing done. Next reason writers quit: you're writing in the wrong genre. When was the last time you took a close look at the genre you've chosen to write in? I think for most people this isn't an issue, but if you're struggling a lot with getting your writing done, or you find you're abandoning projects and losing motivation, this is definitely something you should consider. I did a poll on this channel like a year ago and asked people if they read the same genres that they write in, and only like 5% of people said they write in a different genre that they read, but around 30% of people said they sometimes write in a different genre than they read in. What this means is probably the majority of people, or at least the majority of my audience, usually writes in the genre that they enjoy reading in, but that's not always the case. Just because you enjoy reading a specific genre doesn't mean that that's the best one for you to be writing in. You can end up writing in the wrong genre because there can be pressure to write in a certain genre. If all your writing friends write a specific genre, you might feel pressure to write in that genre as well. Or maybe you feel like you need to write in a certain genre because of some demographic or attribute about who you are. Ultimately, though, what really matters is finding the genre that inspires you to keep writing, the genre that you are actually interested in. If you're writing in the wrong genre, it is often going to lead to giving up on projects and not finishing projects, which is the same thing as giving up on projects. I don't know why I said that twice. And the last reason that writers give up on their novels: fear. Allow me to ask you a question. What happens if you keep writing the novel that you don't want to keep writing, the one that you're no longer motivated to write? If you're making the decision to quit, that's theoretically because quitting is a better alternative than continuing, or at least you think it's a better alternative than continuing. So I'll ask another question: what bad things will happen if you don't quit? That answer is probably specific to you and your specific situation, but it ultimately comes down to fear. Sometimes that fear is about expending effort, a fear of the work involved. If you don't have the motivation to sort of counteract that fear of putting effort in, then that can be a hard thing to do. Sometimes that fear could be around self-doubt, a fear that you won't actually be able to pull off the project. This is especially true if you don't have a lot of experience writing, as the unknown nature of the process brings with it uncertainty, and uncertainty is often a breeding ground for fear. This is where things get dangerous. There's no greater tragedy in life than not doing something that you ultimately want to do because you are afraid to do it in some way. In the worst case scenario, fear can convince you that you don't want to do something that you actually want to do, but it makes you think you don't want to do it because doing it is kind of scary and there's some fear around the process. Fear can destroy your motivation to write, even if in the absence of that fear, you would be motivated to finish the story. This is a case where fear tricks you into quitting because you're afraid of continuing, but if that fear wasn't there, you would actually be motivated to continue. That's the scary part, somewhat ironically. So how do you overcome fear around writing? Well, that's a fairly big, detailed topic, probably too big of a topic to talk about in this one video, but I will give you a couple things to think about. Lots of fear comes out of expectations. If you expect the novel to be great, if you expect everyone to love it, if you expect it to get published, when you anticipate and attach yourself to outcomes, then the fear of not achieving those outcomes can be paralyzing and can stop you from moving towards completing the work that would allow you to achieve those outcomes. Comparison can also breed fear. When you compare your writing to others, or you feel like you need to match their level of success, the possibility of not living up to that comparison can lead to fear, and that fear can lead to quitting. Ultimately, what you need to do is devote yourself to the writing itself, not to the things that you get from the writing. that will allow you to move forward with a lot less fear. There will still be uncertainty, there will still be self-doubt, but when you aren't relying on a specific outcome, it makes it easier to do the work. Speaking of not doing the work, I did not do the work of writing a proper conclusion to this video. So there you have it. I'd love to hear about some of the reasons that you have given up on projects in the comments down below. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.